Good morning, students. Happy Thursday. So yesterday, Wednesday, you had a review worksheet on comparing decimals. And now we're going to start adding decimals, which is very important and a skill that you're going to use often in life as you add up numbers and add up amounts when it comes to money. So it's very important that you pay attention to this lesson. So again, after you complete your review exercises and speed drills, we will learn how to properly add decimals, and they can be a little tricky if you're not patient. So definitely take your time and watch, even rewatch this video. So first it says to add decimals, you first line up the decimal points. So this is the number one instruction here. Line up the decimal points. As long as you do this, your problems will most likely come out great. Line up the decimal points vertically, obviously, going up and down. Then add as you do whole numbers. That just means add normally. Be sure you put the decimal point in your answer. Sometimes you need to put zeros to the right of the decimal point as placeholders. What does that mean? Well, if you have numbers that have a lot of numbers after the decimal and ones that don't, you should use zeros to fill in the space, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So here we have an example, but what I'm going to do is use the sample question here so that I can explain it better. So here for our first sample, we have 3.16 plus 2.3 plus 3.26. Now, let's put in our zeros to make our numbers even and so that we don't shift our answer in any way. So all that means is because we have a few numbers that have 2 digits after the decimal, we're going to fill this one in with a 0 because it's missing a number, and that way we can add vertically, nice and neat. And this one's a little easier, but I'm going to show you how to do the ones that go horizontal and make sure that you don't make mistakes. So here for the first sample, we added our 0 to fill in our space, and now we're just going to add normally. 6 plus 6 is 12, so we carry the 1. Then we have 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 2 is 7. And then we have 3 plus 2 is 5, plus 3 is 8. And we bring down our decimal vertically, straight down. And that's why it's important that you are writing very neat and you are lining up your numbers neatly so that your decimal point is set in the right place. So here for the second sample, we have our numbers going vertically. Now, you don't want to write your numbers all the way to the right like you're used to. Decimals are different. Remember, line up the decimal points. It doesn't matter where your numbers fall as long as your decimal points are lined up. So here for 2.24 plus 3.4 plus 0.23, this is how we do it, paying attention to those decimals. So I'm going to write 2.24, my first number. Then 3.4, but remember my decimal has to line up with this one. So we're not going to write 3.4 to the right. That wouldn't make sense. Line up our decimal, 3.4. Notice how we would have a space here. And then for this one, 0.23. Line up your decimal, 2.3. So what we do is we end up with these blank spaces because we've lined up our decimals correctly. So we would add a 0 here and add a 0 here to make sure that we fill in those spaces and don't shift our numbers. Then we add 4 plus 3 is 7, 2 plus 4 is 6, plus 2 is 8, 2 plus 3 is 5. We line up our decimal nice and neat. 5.87. So I'm going to do number 1 with you just as another practice, and please feel free to watch, rewind, take your time. So here we have 3.14 plus 1.4 plus 2.17. Let's line up those decimals nice and neat. 3.14 plus 1.4, paying attention to that decimal, and 2.17. So as we notice, because we lined up our decimals correctly, we have a space here and we can add a 0. 4 plus 7 is 11. 2 plus 4 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 3 plus 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. And then we line up our decimal. So if you are taking your time to line up those decimals, especially with these horizontal ones, then you're going to get your answers accurate. So if you write rather large, you can use an extra piece of paper and take a photo, but if not, I want to see your work nice and neat in your book. So here is your assignment for Thursday, but it is also going to be continued tomorrow, Friday, as this exercise is all about diagramming. And because I like your diagrams to be neat, and you should too, I'm giving 2 days to complete this assignment, as there are quite a few sentences to diagram. So as you've done before with regular subjects, it is the same method to diagram pronoun subjects. So the same way you've done your previous diagramming with your subjects and verbs, going to do it the same way with your pronoun subjects. So you have your sample up here that you will recognize, but just using the pronouns instead of the original subjects you're used to. And you're going to do this with all of these. Now, on this page, you do have to underline the subjects once and the verbs twice, so that is your first step. What I would do is underline the subjects and the verbs first, all the way down, and then diagram, because you're going to need a separate piece of paper. So complete Think 1 for all of them first. That way you don't have to do them one by one and going back and forth with underlining and diagramming. Once you're done underlining the subjects once and the verbs twice on 1 through 15, then you're going to diagram the subjects and verbs on notebook paper. So just remember to identify those verbs, because that's what's going to help you organize your diagram. Sometimes, as you see here on this sample, you may have a helping verb or a state of being verb. It may not always be obvious like an action verb, but we've done that many times. Notice here that this one says she and Lucy. So here we have our subjects, and then our connecting word and, are giving. So we have an action word here, giving, but we also have are, and that it has to be included in your diagram. So you can look over here for help. You can go back to your diagramming exercises in the previous unit, but just use the same method for numbers 1 through 15, and you can complete this tomorrow as well. And finally, for your Thursday assignment for your spelling, you are going to be proofreading or editing again. So usually I recommend a red pen or a red colored pencil so that you can properly see your editing and proofreading marks. Of course, if you don't have a red pen, that's okay, but usually you would use a red pen. So what you're doing, as we've done once or twice before, is identifying the mistakes in this article, and then on the bottom, writing down all the words that were misspelled. Of course, when you write them down, you're going to write them the correct way, not the way that they were written wrong. And if you aren't comfortable using them in cursive, then I always say it's okay to flip and have them in script here. Although, as we continue practicing cursive, it is a good idea to start getting used to the cursive words. So, as we've done before, if you see a word that is misspelled, you're going to circle it. After you circle it, you will write it down here. There are 9. If there is a word that should be capitalized, like the letter at the beginning of the sentence, then you will draw 3 tiny lines under it. If the sentence is missing a period, you will write the period and then circle it. The point is to make it obvious to the writer where they made their mistake. If there is an extra word, a word that doesn't need to be there, you will squiggle it out using this shape. If a sentence is missing a word, you will draw a tiny arrow in the space and add the word under. If a letter is capitalized that should not be capitalized, you will draw this slash through it. And if there is a part of your article that should be made into a new paragraph because it is talking about a new idea or a new subject, you will write in this paragraph symbol if needed. If you need help with reading this aloud, we can definitely do that over Zoom or schedule a session after our normal meeting.